Hello, everybody. It's time to begin the podcast, so I guess I'll go ahead and start. So welcome all of you who are joining us live, whether it's on Facebook Live or on my Zoom, and those of you who are listening to this as a recording on YouTube, welcome to you as well, kind of in the future. So I'm so excited about doing this podcast series. What inspired this series is that a year or so ago, being in the pandemic and in lockdown and just noticing how everyone was dealing with this, it was really challenging for many, many people. On the relationships, just adjusting to not being able to do the things that they normally do. And I was observing the people who I knew who had an understanding of the principles that I'm going to be talking about on this podcast series, 3 Principles Psychology. The people who had an understanding of that were going through this in a whole different way. They certainly had their disappointments, their stresses, etc., but they were resilient. They used it as an opportunity to go deeper into themselves. They created new businesses. They created new ways of doing what they were doing. It was kind of a no big deal, or not as big a deal to those people. So I knew that, I always have known that what I knew with these principles was super valuable for me and for the people that I work with. But think of the possibility if everybody in the world understood how the mind works and how to tap into this already perfectly designed state of mind called mental health, called resilience, call it serenity, that's available for all of us. Because when we're in that state of mind, we are in touch with creative thought. We're in touch with inspirational thought. And that's what allows us to thrive in these times of the hurricane, in these times of, here I'm having to admit someone, in these times of challenge. And this is not unusual. We've all had challenges all of our lives. This is just a little bit more under the magnifying glass, so it's a little bit more extreme. But I was so inspired to share this with people, and to let people know about my book, which will be out not until October, but you can pre-order it now on all the major book-selling websites. So that information will be available on my website as well. But today, I'm particularly excited to introduce my dear friend, Beverley Wilson Hayes, who's, I often call her the female Martin Luther King. She's like, when she speaks, there's so much love, there's so much power, there's so much, she just speaks directly from that deeper intelligence that we all are, from what we would call a universal mind. And so I'm thrilled to have Beverley. Beverley is a person whose journey itself is an extraordinary story of her own life. And then how she took her own inspiration, her own transformation, and began to share it with other people. At first as a volunteer, and helped so many people in recovery. And then later was hired by City of Oakland to develop programs. I need to mute all here again. James just popped up. She started taking this into communities of high risk, where there was a lot of violence, a lot of drug addiction, a lot of gangs, and the results were miraculous. Matter of fact, the Oakland newspaper wrote a story called Miracle on 66th Street, I believe it was called. I'm going to unmute you, Beverley. Asked to unmute. I'm entering people here as we go. So I've worked with Beverley for many, many years. I met her in Santa Clara County many years ago when I did a program there. And since her earlier programs working with communities, she started working in prisons. Now she works in corporations. She does work all over the world And but most of all, Beverly is just she is love personified. She is a person who really walks the talk, and so I'm honored to have her to be my first guest. So Beverly's going to talk. I'm going to interact with her some as we go along, but mostly it'll be Beverly speaking. And then we'll leave time at the end of the podcast so that all of you, if you have questions or you have comments you want to share, feel free to do that. And you can put those questions in the chat room in case you don't want to say it out loud. I can read it. So, is there anything else I forgot? I don't think so. Let me just check. I think we're good. So, thank you for being here today, those of you who are alive, and those of you who are alive but not here in real time. So, Beverly.
Good morning, everyone. Here we meet again. I've been so excited this weekend waiting for today and to see who everyone would be that brings the energy to this particular podcast, because we all, Joe talks about what I bring. I can't bring anything unless there's someone else here. It's a infusing of the energies. We get together. Joy and I, we get together. We just soar off to the Milky Way galaxy. We don't even know we went. And then when we look around and we be like, "Whoa, that was deep." It's been hours. Us standing on the little bridge talking in his front yard. And I just love you, Joe, to pieces. Actually, Joe came to Coliseum Gardens. He was doing something else in the Bay Area. And then he called me one day and told me that they were going to do this thing in Santa Clara County. And he asked me if I would come and share, a little bit, 20 or 30 minutes about the work that we were doing in Coliseum. And he said, "I will pay you $200. I was like, what, when, and where? Because at the time, I was working at this place called East Bay Community Recovery Project. And we were in 69th and 65th Village. Joe mentioned earlier that after 2.5 years of working and interacting with the residents and the staff in the Oakland Housing Authority and the Oakland Police Department and the Oakland Housing Authority Police Department, who all took the training. There was a big 12-page news spread called A Miracle on 66th Avenue that, I don't know, it just exploded. And people started coming from around the world. I remember the first lady came from British Columbia. She knew Sid personally, but she wanted to talk to the people who had rolled their sleeves up and who were, in the right, doing the work hands-on. And then we got a visit from this man. He was a psychologist. His name was John Wood. And I believe his daughter's name was Joanna. They came and they stayed a long time. And that thing just was a pure example of how these people lived in darkness. I'm not talking, not just literally darkness. They had darkness and apathy in their minds. And the D boys would shoot all the lights out. So right after 5 o'clock, when the sun go down, that place was in pitch darkness and nobody went outside. But after working there 2.5 years and teaching and sharing and getting cussed out and getting told that we were nuts, that these people didn't want any help, our hearts were so humbly alert to what their plight was. And so instead of telling them anything, we listened. We formed groups. One group was Girls Let's Talk. And then we formed another group where it was like they called it a forum. And this professor from San Jose University, she would come and sit in on the groups and take data. And the main complaint that the residents had was the way they were treated by the Oakland Police Department. It wasn't the big rats. It wasn't no lights. It wasn't no grass or equipment for their kids to play on. It wasn't the bodies they found weekly or bi-weekly by the dumpsters. It was their relationship with the police department. And some of the stuff just made you cry. Tears would just come from your heart because, yeah, they had apathy because they said that people would come in with programs and they would tell them what they should do, what they ought to be doing, bring them Hansons. Now, Hansons is a wonderful drink. You feel me, Deborah? It's a wonderful drink. But if that's not your favorite, it means nothing. So the people really wanted some Pepsis and Coca-Colas and 7-Up and Dr. Pepper. And the groups would bring them big cases of Hansons, and it would just, they would try to drink it, but they said, I can't like it. So we got there, we heard that. And one of my main things was integrity. I went back to my office and I said, listen, these people said that the reason they don't get involved in groups is because the leaders, the people come and then they tell them what to do. And after they tell them what to do, then in about 6 months, they disappear overnight. So I hit the desk and I was like, look, I need to know for myself. And we need to know that we're going to be longer than 6 months out here. We need a guarantee that we can tell the people. We can't promise them forever, but it should be something we should be able to tell them, to reassure them. You know what I mean, James? That we were not going to be a fly-by-night company. And that meant a lot to me. So I ain't going to talk a lot about it, but, you know, they were able to give us that guarantee that we would be there at least 5 years. And then we started seeing miracles happen. There was nothing less than miracles because they got a $25 million grant. They did a lot of dumb stuff with the money. And I was going to school at the time for community economic development because I had worked in the communities for years, way before I met Roger in Coliseum. And I knew the experience of working, but I didn't understand the theory behind it. And I also thought to myself that I wanted to be in a position to be able to be where people were making decisions, you know, because if you're going to help, how are you going to help after everybody did everything and nobody had any input that kind of could understand what was going on? But it was interesting. I got a chance to work with a lot of doctors and MFCCs and PhDs. And so I put a comma and God behind my name. And I was just like, something told me inside with a degree like that, you can go anywhere, you can do anything. And I believed it. So it was so crazy, but that was a wonderful time, you know, of seeing how you can teach a few principles that are Sunlike. You know, like when we talk about being in the eye of the hurricane, we talk about getting back to our true self. We talk about our innate wisdom and well-being. When we talk about those things, we aren't talking about anything that you can buy. You can't buy it. You can't borrow it. You have to look inside and then trying to share with people how to get there. It's just 1 minute. I thought my husband would get the phone.
So,
Did it again.
Beverly, she's so wonderful. Oh man. I'm just thrilled that you all are getting to hear her. She's just dealing with her answering phone service right now. And by the way,
I can hear him. I can hear him on my phone. It's very disrupting.
You'll have to excuse me and all of us. This is our first podcast. We're still working out the kinks. It's okay. Go for it, Beverly.
You know, I'm not going to worry
I
about
thought I was
anything.
hallucinating. So, that was pretty good. I thought I was just hearing voices.
No, that was my good friend, y'all. And she always calls when I'm on calls like this. And I don't know how she does it. She does it every time. And one time she called and she could hear the conversation that I was having. And I don't know how that happened. But everything, I believe everything works in divine protocol. So I'm not bothered by it. I'm just going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because, one thing I found out, there's never a difficult or hard time as long as I'm being myself. It's when I go in and I try to talk about things, I talk about things that I know about. I ain't going to try to tell Joe's story because I'm going to do a poor job at that. But talking about me and what I've experienced, that's 110% good. So when we want to get to the core, when we want to lead people to the core of the understanding of 3 principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, the power pack, the transference of energy, the transference of power. And what I mean by that is that we have a way of doing things all our lives. And in some areas of our lives, we're flying high and we're doing all right. But in other parts of our lives, we're doing pitiful. We're failing miserably. And we don't even know how to help ourselves. I'm going to tell you about something else now. I'm going to jump from Coliseum and tell you about, but it's all the same thing. It's called getting in touch with that part of us that ends up in the eye of the hurricane, that place of calm, that place of peace. Because I was pitiful at relationships. My first marriage lasted 22 years, but we were only together about 7 years. But we stayed married because that's what my mother did and my dad did. And then long before, 4 years before I heard about the principles, I went into what's called a 12-step program. And I found a whole new world. I found this new world and I fell in love with it, and it was exclusive. I didn't do anything outside of those borders. But at the same time, I was very upset because I had questions nobody wanted to answer. And then they would say things to me like, well, you're just going to keep on wondering about this and wondering about that until you wonder your butt right back out there. So I was like, oh, man. So I couldn't ask no humans because every time I try to ask them something, even the people that had been there many years, they would get so upset about a simple question like, I felt like addiction is 24/7, but if you got to go to meetings all the time, which I was doing it five a day because I had a bad attitude and I heard that AA stood for altered attitude. So I showed up for I needed more. But I put this question mark up in the sky and I asked God, I said, what about the people that fall through the cracks? Because I've seen people accomplish major things, like go and get their AA degree. This guy built this house. He got an apartment and he made it into a home for his 4-year-old daughter. But because he drank at the end of a year, he was almost ostracized. He didn't feel like he had accomplished nothing because this was the primary goal. And something about that just hurt me. I mean, it hurt me in the core of me because it just didn't seem right. And I couldn't get nobody to even hold a conversation about it with me. But I kept that question mark in the sky. And I knew that there had to be something else. Because they said the alcoholic's problem centered in his mind, which I agreed. But if your problem centers in your mind, shouldn't your answer center there too? I wanted to know more about that. But nobody could tell me more about that. And I could see that by me being inquisitive and curious about things that came up, I had to find someone else to talk to. And I'm not downing the program because I would recommend it for anyone. And I stayed around it 30 years before I just got married and went off to do something else, live my life, because there's life after recovery. There's love after recovery. There's wisdom after recovery. It's just like my wisdom was telling me, you don't have to be afraid to go on a cruise ship because ain't nobody in the AA on it, and stuff like that. And I just started stepping out. And when I learned about the 3 principles, I felt like I had made it home. I felt like I was home. So I would go back to meetings, but I kind of felt like a traitor because I would teach people about how their thoughts were creating, our thoughts are creating our reality. I'd teach them on a napkin. I'd take a stick and write in the dirt, the 3 principles, and just show them how everything was connected. And people was waking up like, man, what? You mean I don't have to? I said, look, I'm not telling you what you should do, but your wisdom inside, if you listen to it, just transfer the power of what you've been doing, transfer that power into innate mental health, into mind, not our personal mind, but the divine mind. Let that power take over and guide you. It's going to require faith, and it's going to require trust. And it's going to sound crazy as hell sometimes, because sometimes people was like, what are you doing? What do you mean you're moving? You have a life here in Stockton. People will cut their right arm off for. And I said, oh no. I said, that's how it looks to you. But how it looked to me was I was pointing to something that was inside of people, but they couldn't see what I was pointing to. They only saw me. And then they want to lift me up like I was, oh, hell to the no. You ain't finna, I'm not finna let you put me on no pedestal, because I'm not gonna, when it drops, I'm not gonna let be the one hung by it. You understand what I mean, Martin? I wasn't going for that, and I didn't like it. So pretty soon, instead of commuting to that job, I moved there, in which I knew a lot less people, because when I got sober in my town, it changed my whole city. The mayor of Stockton, before she even got elected, was walking with us down the street saying, "Seeds of hope, say no to dope," because we had started a couple of halfway houses for women and children. And then this lady, she got involved, Joan Dara. And next thing we know, she was so empowered by our little speeches and talk, she ran for mayor. She was already a judge. Her husband was a judge, but So here I am being invited to the mayor's house. And so I said, well, I bet when you become mayor, you're going to change on us. I was suspicious. And she said, no, I won't. So I took the van, and I took a couple of the girls with me, and we went up to the city hall. And I said, I'm here to see Joan Dara. Do you have an appointment? I said, no, I don't. She said, well, what's your name? And I told her. And she came back running. The one lady came back running, and Joan was right behind her. Come in here. I want you guys to see everything. Come on. She did not change. She was just, she credited us, being in our walks and rallies. She credited us with giving her the courage to run for mayor. And we was like, get out of here, But I knew that was because she heard the 3 principles on the inside. And then she decided that she could step up she was just going to go higher. And that's what she did. And it was a lot of the girls that was in that house, they never went back to active addiction. They started small businesses. This way before I left Stockton to go to Oakland. And on the side of that, we did a lot of volunteer work in the county jails and in prisons, Mule Creek and DVI, a lot of famous prisons in California, where we also taught the guys. It was between recovery and the 3 principles, because I was the only one that knew the 3 principles. But I was usually the one that led the meetings inside the prisons. And it was a lot of fun. It was such a sense of pleasure. And I always wait to see when people wake up, like few of you, like we were talking, you heard something and you just whole face just lit up, because these principles have sun-like qualities to them. And we start out in darkness when we're enshrouded by different circumstances, no matter what it be. I've seen a man make so much money that he was in darkness. But once the light is shining on darkness, the darkness dissipates. And that's what happens with the three principles. It opens up sun-like solar systems inside of our soul. I have seen it actually tan guys' skin that was locked up 24 hours a day in the jails in San Jose. They only go out 1 hour a day. They were orange. But after like 7 weeks of Kathy Casey and I teaching these classes, we came back to class and the guys looked like they had been sunbathing. I was like, where did you guys go, to the beach? No, we ain't went to the beach. And I went home crying. I got Dr. Mills on my car phone and I said, Roger, why you didn't tell me that these principles are sun-like? They have sun-like qualities, you know? I said, these guys look like they've been sunbathing and they've only had their same hour, but what they're thinking and how they're changing their lives in their visits, you know, and in their interactions with the correctional officers, they begin to just see from such a higher vantage point, and it made them feel good. You know what I mean? They start teaching. And we was looking for trainers. We was looking for them. That's what you're always on the lookout for. In every job I ever went to, I told them this in the beginning. I said, I came here to work my way out of a job. You should be teaching this. You should be teaching this. And we were always looking for leaders to train as trainers. And that was our specialty. So,
Beverly?
Yes.
Can you share a little bit? You have so much to share. It's just amazing. Could you talk a little bit about what happened after, during your program with like relations between the different minorities and the people in the projects and the police, or the guards and the inmates? Just give a little bit of a picture of how tapping into that sunlight, into that resilience, into that true self that people are, through understanding how their mind worked, how that transformed people.
Oh, countless stories. But the one that comes to mind, the main one that comes to mind, because it actually changed the way the police department instructed their officers. You got to understand too that when you start this work, whether it's a small class or a big community or whatever, there's always going to be this invisible force that you're going to feel. It'll come in and take over the meetings. That's why you were saying earlier, James, that you be saying, how long I got to talk? 45 minutes. Then you look around, it's only 5 minutes, because there's a spirit that takes over us and that joins us and aids us in our work. So one day Joe wants me to go back to Coliseum and tell you about the interactions with the residents and the police officers, but there were so many relationships. They had broken relationships with the welfare department. They couldn't get, like, you know, things we take for granted. Pizza companies would not deliver pizzas there because it was so violent. They couldn't get none of that stuff, water, none of that. So we was in the very early days, you know, maybe 7 or 8 weeks in. And that particular day, I was teaching about separate realities, and we were using the judge as an example. So the people in the residents had gotten so curious, and they just start playing around with, that's what I told them to do. Just go back to your lives and play around with this. Don't take my word for it. Go get your own opinion. So they start playing around with it right away. And then they start seeing little bitty differences and big differences, you know, about how they were speaking to their children and curious about why they did different things. And the love level just increased so rapidly. So this particular day, we was teaching about separate realities, and I used the judge as an example to help the people see that behind that gown and that gavel, there's a human being that function psychologically the same way that we do. And I don't know for you what that did for you when you first heard it. But when I first heard that leveled the playing field for me. I was like, what do you mean? Tell me more, because when I first learned this, I was just like, I wanted everything all at once, but you have to wait. And so I was sharing with them what I learned, that everybody is doing the best they can based on how they see it. And that even if you're a judge or a high person at a position at a welfare office, who could have a high position at a welfare office, but that's how it looked to people. And so to teach them that they're going through something inside their head too. Everybody is walking in their own thought bubble. And that if we could begin to be curious beyond that road and see the person, how might our interactions differ? So they thought about that, and they were saying like, oh, you saying like when I go to the welfare office and I ask for my papers and she throw them down in the chute, instead of me cussing her out and going off, maybe I could just look at her and think, wow, I don't know what she's going through today, but she sure is unhappy, because happy people don't act like that. And I thought that was excellent, just like, yes, more of that is what we want to see, seeing what part we play in the situation. So out of the universe, and I tell you, we always have universal help, divine help, and there's no remnants. Here comes this police officer into the classroom, and it's like 30 people in this classroom. And when he walks in, he can't believe it. He was like, what is these people? He knew every one of them by name. It was people who sat in the back of his police car that he had arrested over and over again. And it was their grandmothers and the people that took up for them, that kind of shrouded their work. And then he said, they sitting here on the edge of their seat, listening to this woman. What is she saying to them? And so it was a perfect, like life will bring you a real life experience in real time, for you to see how these guiding principles are connecting, and they're animated and they're alive all the time. And so they was like, well, Miss Smith, she asked, she said, well, why don't you tell us your separate reality? We've never talked to you about how it is to do your job. She said, we just get mad when we see you look like our grandkids ain't doing that, and you just come up and snatch them up. And so they were asking him to tell them, what it was like from his side. And he was so uncomfortable. He was stuttering, but finally he got it out. And he said, when we come up to make an arrest, there's things that we have to secure. And he explained it to him, the protocol. He said, now, when one of you run up, I know you're concerned about your officer, but, we've gotten hit in the back of the head by rocks. We've got bottled by not securing this area. So our first job is a security area. And like we asked you, if you'll wait a minute, when we get everything secure, then we'll be happy to come and talk to you. And they said, well, I never did give you a chance past that point because I didn't believe you. And he said, well, my name is Jerry, and I'm going to be the community police officer in this area. This is my beat. He said, and from now on, if you have any problems, you can come to me. And they looked at him and they listened to him and they said, that's just separate realities. I never thought that he had to do these things, that thing, whatever, And so later, they formed such a, because every week we would meet, they formed such a bond that Jerry brought his other 9, he had 9 officers that were under him. He brought them in on, 2/3 of the room was residents and another third was officers, all learning the same things. And Jerry couldn't get it. Took him 6 months to get it. But some of the other officers picked it up right away, but he knew it was something to it. Even though he couldn't get it inside, he knew that it was something there and that if he stuck with it, he would. So it turns out that the residents, they found out how they were aiding and abetting the people that kept the neighborhood, filled with drugs and, just a bunch of murders and all that stuff. They was helping them because when the police come and say, what you doing here? They say, that's my nephew, leave him alone. And then pretty soon when they learned that the part that they were playing in the separate reality of the community, and they wanted a healthier community, they came up with their own ideas how to get rid of them. So I know what we're going to do. They had a little meeting and they said, we're going to make wanted posters. They made wanted posters and put the drug dealers' faces on them, letting them know they was not aiding and abetting no more. And they said, wanted out of this community, and posted them all over both housing developments. And some people say, well, where did they go? I don't know where they went, but I know they got the heck up out of there because the residents wasn't playing that no more. So that was pretty powerful. And is that enough, or you want some more?
I think then the other thing that started happening is Jerry started bringing all of his other fellow officers to the meetings along with the residents. And so and those relationships changed, but also between the Cambodian community and the African American and the Hispanic community.
Well, that was the first one. Yeah,
racism broke down.
Oh yeah, that was the best. That was the first one, and that was the best one because it was so sweet. There was this Cambodian guy named Chi, and it was lucky for me that I didn't know that African Americans didn't talk to Cambodian people. I didn't know. They had a bunch of little rules. I didn't know them, so I just went in being myself. Hey, how you doing? Well, and then they say, don't speak English. I say, well, you know, hello, hi, and I touch my heart and they touch their heart. Pretty soon, I just kept doing it. And pretty soon they started speaking to me, and they started speaking to Ron, and they started speaking to Lisa. So they were saying somebody was saying that the Cambodians were already organized, but they wouldn't tell you who the leader was. So you might get cussed out, you might get the door slammed in you 4 or 5 weeks in a row, but you just keep going back, just keep being cheerful, because our hope is that one day they're going to see that we're there and we really care about them, and that they're going to want to speak to us. And that did happen. One day I went up on the 3rd floor and I knocked on the door, and lo and behold, a few minutes later, I understood that I was talking to the leader. His name was Chi. I was talking to the leader of the Cambodians. It was like they were already organized. And he told me that they didn't like the African Americans because the African Americans were lazy and they had been here all their lives and they didn't accomplish anything. And he said that they would buy a 100-pound bag of potatoes, and every house that lived in that development would get some of those potatoes, and they would eat no meat, any dirt, any ground. They planted vegetables because they had a mission. They were going to buy one nice car, pay for it cash, save their money, eat no meat. And so he told me that story, and then I said, wow. And then he told me how he got out of, what happened to him in Cambodia, how he almost got killed and had to come across the water and almost drowned. Oh my God, it was just such a moving story. And so I said, well, do you think you could come to the meetings downstairs and share this story or something like that with the other residents? And he said, I'll try. He said, but I've been living here 8 years, and our doors touch, the screen doors touch when they come out the door at the same time, but they didn't speak to each other. It was a no-no. So anyway, he finally agreed. He came to the meeting, and when he came, 25 Cambodian people came with him, because where he goes, they go. And so I also got a Asian mental health sent us an interpreter. And I thought he talked real good though, but I was glad they had one because it made the people feel more at ease. And so he told his story. And while he was telling his story about how they buy one car at a time, and each family uses that car, and then they'll do it again. They'll get the, potatoes, no meat, there's rice, they'll stick to all that, and then they'll get another car, and then that's pretty soon everybody has a car. Well, when he was telling that story, and he said that they would buy rice and beans and potatoes, and they wouldn't eat no meat, I could see Ruby. She hit her sister and her mama, and she said, "Now, girl," "you know we ain't gonna go without eating no meat." They went without eating meat, and they was flabbergasted. So that part went over so good. And then when he said how they bought the cars, then Miss Smith, she said, "Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that you guys do all this sacrificing to buy one car at a time? We thought the misconception was that the government was buying them these cars." So they was mad at them, like, y'all just came over here and they buying y'all brand new cars. They didn't have no idea to even think, nowhere in their little bitty mind, that they had unity and would get together and buy these cars and share them until they got, more and more and more. But they all learned from each other, and we all learned from each other. And that day they decided to teach us. He taught us how to say Shin Sum. That's hello or good morning in Cambodian. The Latino lady taught us hola or que paso. And we taught them, hey, what's up? And the people in the group agreed that no matter where they saw each other, whether it was in the front door, in the yard, or at the store, that they were going to greet each other in one of these manners. Mm. And oh my God, that was so powerful. Because when the seed lady came, the kids first, they was dreaming of Uzis, and they was drawing Uzis and different stuff like that. And I cried all the way home. I had an hour and a half commute, and I was wondering, you asked them the wrong question. So on my way back the next day, the Spirit said, ask them, what do they dream they had? Oh my God.
Beverly, sorry to interrupt. Could you, about 3 more minutes, and then we'll take questions, okay? So I want to give you time to kind of wrap things up here.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. And so when I asked them about the dreams, and all the little Cambodian girls had permission to come to my class, they had uniforms and dances they did at community events. Well, they started drawing that they wanted grass and they wanted fruit trees with them outside picking the fruit. They wanted their playgrounds restored. And, like I told you, it's invisible help that comes to our aid all the time when we learn the transference of that power, just turning it over to our innate wisdom. Then it's if you have something that you want to do, a dream or something like that, just begin it, because here comes this lady that owned a feed company and a flower company and trees, a nursery, and she started bringing all these things. And next thing you know, there's a Cambodian man digging with a hoe. There's a Black African-American man putting in a seed. There's an African-American woman digging a hole. There's an Asian American putting in a tree. And pretty soon, before you knew it, the whole land, that whole little area was grass. It was everything the kids dreamed of. And that only happened because of the power of love.
Oh, thank you so much, Beverly. Well, I want to give an opportunity, and if anybody has a question, can we put this on gallery view now? Anyone has a question, on the bottom of your screen there's a reaction thing. Just put up a hand, and if you have a question, we'll call on you, and you can. I'll unmute you. So, does anyone have a comment or a question on what? Oh, Beverly, thank you so much for everything. There's an encyclopedia of stories just like that in Beverly that are on so many things, but you got just a taste. And in the book, there's most of one chapter is about Beverly's stories, so you can read more about that there. So, who has a comment or a question? Yes, Deborah. Okay, I've got Deborah. I'm gonna
I unmuted.
Okay,
Good.
good.
Hi, Beverly.
Hi.
When you were working with the officers, and that of course is such a sensitive topic to us because we've had these murders, we continue to have really unfair situations, and but when you said the chief himself or the head guy, it took like 6 months. Do you know what popped with him or how it snapped?
Oh, it same thing happened in Minnesota. We worked with the St. Paul police for many months. Joe, you remember that with Ed
Yep.
Lemon.
With that,
We just taught them the basic principles, and they start seeing improvements with their children. You know, they start seeing it work at home, and then they like Jerry said, he had went all the way through the academy. They taught him what a community policing looked like, but they didn't teach him the how to. So he won the California Peace Prize that year. He gave me and the class all the credit in the world for teaching him and his officers, but he won the Peace Prize. And he said that it helped him so much because it was the how to do community policing that they could not tell him when he went back to college to get that a special degree.
And he was honored by President Clinton, Janet Reno, and Jerry Brown, the governor of California, for such the exemplary relationship between the police and the community. And that's just one story. There are Modelo in Florida. There's books written about that. There are programs in Mississippi and the Bronx and Minneapolis and Des Moines and all over the country. Similar programs to what Beverly did. And Beverly worked on a lot of those programs. So Debbie has her hand up. Debbie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hey, everybody. Oh, Beverly, that was wonderful. Hi, Michael. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Debbie.
Beverly, I have just goosebumps listening to, number one, your recovery story, but number two, the amount of people that were changed by your recovery. And, they often say that addiction is a family disease, but so is recovery. Recovery spreads too. And, just bravo. How did you first get in with the police department, though? That's what I'm curious about.
How did I first get into the police department?
Yeah, how did you connect with them at first?
Let me think. The first interaction I had with the police department, well, I volunteered a lot, because I spoke a lot for NA. I was a circuit speaker for NA and AA. And it's all part of community, everywhere you go, the police department is part of community. And at some point, if it's something that the people are talking about and asking for, then the police become curious and they want to know what it is.
Yeah.
And this was something they had never saw before because one person at a time, it was self-sustaining.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense because we're seeing that too now. Just, you don't have to, like you said, there is a universal presence that's going to guide you and lead you. And those personal relationships, that's exactly what we've seen with our programs too, is those personal relationships. Sometimes it's one call. We just had ours picked up by a public broadcasting station, our videos, from one call and one Zoom meeting, so those things can happen. And I just love what you just shared about that, just going up, suiting up, showing up, and just sharing what you have in your heart and sharing it with so much love, and that's what I hear every time I listen to you. It's that you are so plugged into that source of love that it comes right through you when you're speaking. And I think that's what changes people. It's not our words, but it's the feeling, the intention behind it, and how we're living it. That is the greatest testimony of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
You can't give away what you don't have.
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
Thank you, Debbie. So good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you guys too. God bless.
Sue Mackey has her hand up.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, Beverly. How are you doing?
Doing good. Good to see you, girl.
Good to see you too. And I've listened to quite a few of your other video talks and interviews, and I've resonated when you have said you were such a thinker and an analyzer, and you questioned everything and you processed everything through your mind. And I'm wondering for you, what was the turning point with that for you?
Well, I often felt like I was spinning my wheels or on a hamster run, you know, and something inside of me whispered one day and said, perhaps there's a better way. And I don't know, me, I'm an extremist. When I really want an answer, and I don't know where I got this from, but I started craving silence. And that's what I would go to. I just go somewhere. I wouldn't turn off everything. And I would just get quiet and wait and wait and wait. And sometimes I wouldn't hear anything. But when I came out of it, I always felt better. And then sometimes I would hear things that was so crazy. But I say, I'm not going to walk and do this. I'm going to run and do it. So that's kind of how I got started on it's a transference of power. You know, it's just a transference of power. It's taking my little bitty pea mind that tries to work out everything and turning it over to this infinite wisdom and possibilities, you know. And then ideas just come that I know I couldn't have thought of it. And then at some point, I love not knowing. They say you're in the in-between place, or you're in a time of something. But to me, when I'm not knowing something, there's a place inside of me that I can rock. I just can relax in it and just chill out, because it's a place that tells me something's being created. This ain't no mystery. It is a mystery, but it's a time of creation. And then I get expected, like something's gonna happen. I don't know what it is, but it's gonna be good. I could just feel it. And then I wait, and voila, some little idea I had turns up bigger than the sky. It's just over and over and over and over again.
And that power that Beverly is describing there is a power every human being has. She's not special. She's extraordinary, but she's not special in that. Everybody has that.
Everybody.
And that's how the world changes. When people learn to listen to that still small voice, to that wisdom, to that insight that's always running behind the scenes in us, but we discount it. Well, it came from me. It can't be smart. It can't be intelligent. But when you begin to respect the voice of your wisdom, you will be a change agent in your own little world. And maybe bigger, like Beverly or other people. You might write books, or you might change communities, or you might just have a really good life.
Yeah.
And
somebody's always watching us.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said, and someone's always watching us, you know, whether it's a neighbor, a sister, a brother, or, you know, one of your children. My kids picked up on so many things that I just walked in. I didn't teach it to them per se, but that's you can feel that.
Yeah. And you said you wanted to make a comment.
Well, thanks, Beverly. Thank you.
Thank you. What I love about what Beverly says is it just happens, but so many people are walking in asleep, and they don't recognize, they don't even see it happening, and as a result, it won't happen again as often because it's undermined. I can remember someone telling me once that if you want to make more money, revel in everything you get. So I would get excited when I got a coupon in the mail. I would get excited if I got a letter that the stamp wasn't used. I could use that again. And it made me realize that noticing the little things gets you the big things.
That's true, Ann. That's true. It really
does.
Well,
you're one of my new big things.
You're one of mine too. Thank you.
Well, we've got about 4 more minutes left on our podcast. Does anyone else want to raise your hand? Or yes, James, you want to go ahead?
Yes, just very quickly. I've gotten so much identification from this. And, you know, to look at Beverly and I'm a white man about to turn 60 who had a pool in his backyard when he was in high school, but I still was in a very dark place in my mind, very in opposition to everything. And of course that lands you either in jail or maybe in a 12-step room if you're lucky, which I was.
Mhm.
But, you know, after about a year and a half, I met Joe and I read the Serenity Principle, and I started becoming the guy in the AA room that 98% of the people said, don't talk to that guy, he's crazy.
Got other
But
ideas.
Yes, but then 2% of the people would say, what did you say? Because I've been suffering the same thing, this feeling like there's more and I don't know how to move into it. And it just, you coalesce so much together for me, Beverly. And I'm just so grateful. I found myself in the right place today, and I'm just so glad I got here. Thank you.
That is so good.
Great, James.
I
Anybody
feel
else?
you.
Anybody else? A comment?
Is
Beverly,
Helene here?
who?
Helene.
I don't see Helene.
I saw the name pop up, but I don't know if it's our Helene. But anyway, that's just me.
Well, Beverly, I really want to thank you and give you an opportunity if there's anything you want to say in closing here. But I just want people to know there are a lot more people out there like Beverly in this world that are understanding these principles that we're pointing to on this podcast and in my books, that are waking up, and it's really changing people's lives. So just keep listening. Every 3 weeks we'll be having another guest, and the next time we've got 2 nurses. With all that's going on in healthcare and with the pandemic, a lot of healthcare professionals are burning out. And these 2 nurses, one's from Northern Ireland and one's from Texas, both work to train nurses in these principles and in resilience. So tune in for that in 3 weeks. Love you guys. Hope to see you all in 3 weeks. Spread the word.
Spread the word.
Spread the word.